my next guest is simply my favorite Vols reporter. I think he is fair without being a homer. And his name is Caleb Calhoun. He writes for allfortennessee.com. I always champion allfortennessee.com this time of year because he has been known to write extraordinary historical stuff. He's the guy that would come out and say, here are all the Tennessee quarterbacks since they changed from the single wing ranked. Which, you start asking yourself, what's the difference between 12 and 14, admittedly. But no, I mean, it's just a great historical stuff, which is what you write about this time of year. But we have the talk about the orange and white game right now. Caleb Calhoun, allfortennessee.com. I guess the first thing is that I want to talk about, I was critical of Jeremy Pruitt for in a less than literate way, calling out Tennessee fans when they arrived in good numbers for the spring practice game. I know some fans have said, hey, it's a new broom. This is the way it goes. He wants high standards, blah, blah, blah. But what did you take from Jeremy Pruitt and his comments following the orange and white game? Caleb Calhoun, All for Tennessee.
Well, it's funny you ask me because we got two guys on our site right now who wrote differing opinions on that. One feels he was justified, and then another one, a co-expert of mine, Billy Williford, thinks that Jeremy Pruitt actually kind of agrees with you. Didn't criticize Pruitt as much, but feels like he should be happy with the attendance. I think Pruitt, I think a lot of it is a little bit of much ado about nothing because he didn't really, I think sometimes people are saying that he went out of his way to trash the entire fan base. Really what he said was we had some guys show up, we had some legitimate no-shows, and then we had guys who could have been there that weren't. And I think he wasn't, it struck me more as not excessively warm praise for the fans as it was harsh criticism, the way some other people are saying it. And I think for most Tennessee fans, I think they're actually willing to accept it, mainly because they've been tired of all the fluff that Butch Jones sold for 5 years. I can't, and that was mainly about the players, but I lost track of how many times the coaches would talk of a player in practice the last 5 years, and then we never saw them watching them on the field.
And what I said at the beginning of the show here, Caleb, forgive me for interrupting, is that Butch Jones would say nothing by speaking in great lengths. Jeremy Pruitt says nothing by not saying anything. Really, it's kind of the same, and that's the message that I get that's a little disturbing to me. But yes, please continue. I just wanted to interject that point. Please continue, Caleb Calhoun of allfortennessee.com.
Well, there's truth to that, but the difference is Jeremy Pruitt isn't talking up these players like they're the greatest thing, like talking up specific individuals like they're the greatest thing since sliced bread, and then we're always wondering where they are on the field. Mm-hmm. And I think that was the annoyance with Butch Jones, is we kept hearing, most notable, he's no longer with the program, but with Quay Cal, like last year, Randy Hoke and Butch Jones spent forever talking them up, and then we hardly really saw him making any of an impact last season. And I think that, you're right, Pruitt still says little too. He kind of takes the page from the Nick Saban playbook. So I will say that. As far as attendance itself goes, now that's just as far as my thoughts on Pruitt's comedy, but as far as attendance itself, yeah, I don't have as much of a problem with it. I know some fans do think it should have been greater. What I would say, the comparisons were to, some of the other spring games that had major sellouts and things like that, and most notable was Nick Saban in 2007 with the 90,000 and Kirby Smart 2 years ago. But Kirby Smart is a Georgia alum, a Georgia grad, and so when he took over, there was a little bit more hype behind him. And then when Nick Saban took over at Alabama, again, there's very few home run hires you can make that the minute you hire a coach is going to work out, and Nick Saban was that for Alabama. So I think that's where the excitement was. I think Pruitt, for Tennessee fans, there's tepid optimism with Jeremy Pruitt.
Yeah, I hope it's tepid optimism, because I did a monologue saying, I don't like these fans who say, I am all on board. He hasn't coached a game yet. I think a wait and see attitude is much healthier. And for that matter, I think that we did have a lot of people that went all on board with Lane Kiffin, let's just say, he's brash, he's young, that's better than that stuffy old Phil Fulmer. Well, where are we now? And really, that's been the case with every subsequent coaching hire at Tennessee, which is why I want to take, and plus I'm in this position, a wait and see attitude on what's going on. I do want to make this point, and I'm going to repeat myself from my monologue, Caleb Calhoun of allfortennessee.com, but I really felt like it isn't, Jeremy Pruitt's place to really being talked about if one fan shows up or 100,000. First of all, although I think the crowd was inflated, as Tennessee is known to do, I thought it was an extraordinary crowd considering it's coming from a 4-8 team. Number two, where is he coming off telling Tennessee fans or fans in general how they should spend their time and money? I know it was a free gate, but you still have gasoline costs and all of that, plus time. Where is he going complaining about allegedly 65,000 people at a meaningless scrimmage for a 4-8 team? That really bothers me, I got to tell you. And that's my take on that. And I do think a lot of Tennessee fans will look the other way because they just want a winner. But what is your thought here about Pruitt and the way he has handled the media? Jared Guarantano, for instance, never talking to the media during spring practice. To me, that tells me Keller Crisp has got to be number one on the depth chart right now. What are your thoughts?
I thought about that. It's hard because Jerry Pruitt is taking like I said, he's taking a bit of a page from Nick Saban's playbook of kind of keeping things shielded, and which is frustrating when you're in the media. I will say that I think the same thing. I think that he's leaning towards Jared Guarantano starting. I'm not Jared Guarantano, Keller Crisp starting when the season starts. But at the same time, when he said on signing day, when he talked about how, I remember when he said, who said we have depth issues at quarterback? We got guys we can convert over. Well, he converted Tyler Bird over, and Tyler Bird didn't work out at cornerback. They were trying him at safety, and then they converted him back to receiver. So I think he said things, or he won't say things in press conferences that allude to what he's planning to do, but he may or may not change on the fly. So I think he is quiet about Guarantano right now because he's preparing for Chris to be the starter. But that doesn't mean that he'll just go all in with Chris. I think if Guarantano outplays Chris in the fall, Guarantano will win the job. I will say Guarantano did play great on Saturday. I think part of that was the defense, for instance, we've been hearing Pruitt, based on the things he had been saying throughout the spring, criticizing the defense a little bit, and there was kind of concern that the defense was struggling. And boy, were we right to guess that when we saw that game on Saturday. The first team defense looked awful. And it looked exactly like the last Tennessee football defense that made it switch to a 3-4, which happened under Sal Terry in 2012.
But I will say this, though. Don't you think, though, that the 3-4, and for that matter, the pro set, these are modern defenses, offenses, and maybe it is best to get in line with such offenses and defenses? I mean, let's face it, maybe the wishbone works for a service academy, but they're not out there trying to produce pro football players. Tennessee is, and therefore going to more of a pro-style offense and defense would seem to me to be more in conjunction with getting better players. Do you see that this...
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's a smart thing, and it's a good move long-term that's necessary. I just think that it's pretty clear there's going to be a massive growing pain with it this year, and so that's kind of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I can get that, and I mean you've even brought that up with old Sal Sinceri, but one wonders. I mean, if it wasn't that the head coach was going out of business, if maybe Sinceri, who has a nice reputation as a coach, would not have had more time to make it stick. I know he's the most unpopular guy in the world, but look, I'm not going to bash anybody whose family owns Pennsylvania macaroni. I'm sorry, I'm not. Anyway, it's Caleb Calhoun of allfortennessee.com who's just wondering where that comment came from. But I did want to touch on, you were impressed, you said, with Guarantano, but I'm looking at 15 of 27, nice yards per throw average. But, Quentin Dormady didn't throw an incomplete pass in the last spring game. He's now at Houston. What can we take from that? I look at these practices and I'm sort of like, all right, take it with a grain of salt. What do you think?
to be benched throughout
Yeah.
through last season. That was a desperation move by Butch Jones to keep his job. And I think we can read some into it. I think the big thing you can read is, and again, it's kind of like looking for potential. And I mean, we saw a few throws Jarrett Garantano made that were impressive throws. There was one corner throw to Josh Palmer that was into about triple coverage that he dropped in perfectly. And then that touchdown pass he threw over the middle to Eli Wolf was a pretty pass too. So I think you can take kernels of it. I don't think you live and die by the spring game, obviously. But I would say that one thing working in his favor, as critical as I am of the defense, Garantano was working behind, you would say, a makeshift offensive line, given all the injuries that the unit's having right now. So I think you can take some things from it. I think if a quarterback can drop a ball perfectly into triple coverage, he can drop a ball perfectly into triple coverage. Now, he may not be able to do that again, but we at least know the potential's there.
No, yeah, and it should be mentioned he's a sophomore. So, you might, sophomore, it's probably going to have some ups and downs and such. I mean, not everybody came in like Peyton Manning did 20-odd years ago. I'm talking to Caleb Calhoun of All for Tennessee. You don't like the defense, although remember Darren Kirkland Jr. was out. There's a surprise, huh? But what other takes did you come from the spring game? Possibly lack of depth at running back, or just what else did you take from the game?
Well, lack of depth at running back isn't as much of a concern with Mongo London and Jeremy Banks coming in, I think, in the summer. But I think one thing I took is, as bad as the defense was, I think it was more on the secondary and the coverage of the linebackers. I actually think I think the defensive line, at least the first unit, was pretty solid. Shai Tuttle got a push, he forced a fumble, and Jonathan Congo and Kyle Phillips both picked up a sack. So I think the front line actually looked pretty decent on the defense. I think it's the back seven that's struggling.
Yeah.
And then, again, but that's also a grain of salt because the offensive line is so depleted. I don't know if that defensive line is going to look that good the rest of the way. But I did take that away. I think that Brent Samaglia nailing 2 40-yarders is a pretty good thing. We saw last year, or the last 4 years, Aaron Medley could be deadly accurate, and then when it came time to kick a field goal of 40 yards or more, he just turned into the worst kicker ever. And so I think it was a breath of fresh air for Vols fans to see a field goal kicker be able to make kicks beyond 40. I didn't really see anything from the punters that really impressed me, either one, but Nigel Warrior was solid in the return game, and then the receivers and tight ends really stood out. Josh Palmer made some nice catches. Marquez Callaway had that one-handed grab. Eli Wolf is not ready to give up that spot at tight end. That looks pretty clear. So those are kind of the big things.
All right, yeah, and that's a good point there with Eli. Well, I'm just trying to go into guys that I'm really excited about playing next year. Ty Chandler, believe it or not, is one of them. Trey Smith, but how excited can you get on an offensive lineman? Possibly Christ. How excited can you get from a 55% passer from Stanford, but 19-6 touchdown to interception ratio, and Stanford is, who else has 3 number 1 draft choices overall come as a quarterback than Stanford, so, that's a good thing here. But I'm trying to think, who else are you excited about going into the 2018 season? Any individual players that you mentioned Wolf, that's a good guy, but who else are you excited about next year?
I'm really excited to see Marquez Callaway again.
Okay.
I think Marquez Callaway was limited by the coaches last year. He demonstrated against Georgia Tech he's got unique and raw athletic ability, and he's got hands, so I think that's going to be exciting to see. There are also quite a few defensive linemen that have, again, struggled to live up to their hype so far, but I think this year, under a new system, they might have a chance to live up to it. I mentioned the 3 guys, Congo, Tuttle, and Phillips. I'm excited to see all them in the front. And then I'm excited to see Darrell Taylor and see how he handles being an edge rusher at outside linebacker now and moving. He was very good at rushing the passer last year. This spot might fit him better. I mean, you think best case scenario, again, major exaggeration here, but you think something like what DeMarcus Ware was the year with Denver when they won that Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's a really exciting thing to see. I think the scariest part for Tennessee, and I said this before it started because of the 3-4 switch, and I think that it looks pretty clear after Saturday. I think the secondary is going to be miserable, particularly at cornerback. I don't think Pruitt would be an
And when you look at the quarterbacks that are coming back, I mean, on teams at Tennessee, realistically are thinking, now we need to knock one of these guys off. Somebody like Shermer or Locke or someone like that. These are going to be guys, I think, that are going to be playing in the NFL in the future. And, yeah, that's going to be tough. You got to get to the passer, that sort of thing. So, yeah,
They have the worst opening game ever for this, going up against West Virginia's air raid offense.
Yeah, I mean, and Dana Holbergson, I've been in those press meetings and all that, and I mean, their quarterback, they'll go like 21-25, and they want to talk about the incomplete passes. It's unique. Sometimes I think it can get a little bit too much, too much of that negativity. It grinds on you. But, they actually look for, that perfect, no incompletion game, that sort of thing at West Virginia. Doesn't everybody? Hey, I wanted to go on. I know you were critical, allfortennessee.com. Phil Fulmer, who has been talking to Holly Warlick about a contract extension. I think it's a must. I think that in college athletics, every coach needs 4 years ahead of time for recruiting purposes, to indicate I'm gonna be here, et cetera, et cetera. I think the fact that Holly Warlick, who has been with the program since the 70s, has not received this, does not speak well of the program. And frankly, I want to know what Holly Warlick hasn't done that Pat Summitt did her last 4 years. And but you were critical of the idea of giving her an extension. But don't you think that she's doomed if she has nothing left on her contract?
Not so much, and here's why. And I mentioned this in the story. Normally, I would agree with you on its face. But the reason Tennessee's in a unique situation is it's kind of ironic because Holly Warlick did a good enough job on the recruiting trail to not need the extension. And that's ironic, but she's got this class that she signed last year. She's got this class locked in for this year. That's going to be the bulk of her roster for 2 to 3 years. So I don't think Tennessee can afford to go without a major recruiting class for a year or two. And that's kind of, I know it's ironic because it's credit to Holly Warlick for stacking the roster the way she has. But because she's done that, I think Tennessee has the luxury of, it's a dirty business move, but they have the luxury of not extending her contract right now and giving her a year just to see what she does. And then they could not renew it and it wouldn't cost them anything. And then they'd still have all those same players in the program. I wouldn't foresee any of them transferring out if Tennessee got the right coach to replace her. And I think that was the big thing, is you're right on its surface. If this is football, yeah, because you got to recruit every year and you need to reload your roster every year. But you don't necessarily need to do that when it comes to basketball. And Warlick got 2 stacked recruiting classes back to back. And so the roster is still pretty set, at least through the next 2 years.
Well, I think one of the things about Warlick, I mean, you can say, well, she hasn't won a national championship or something, but college basketball is so different than it was during Pat Summitt's heyday. Look, Old Dominion and Louisiana Tech are not going to be competing for titles anymore. That's who Pat Summitt, by and large, beat out, except for in 2008. I mean, and the whole money game and all this, it's sort of like, it is like football, in fact, where I don't think that we can expect in the future 30 straight victories over Kentucky, basketball school as it is, because with the television money now, it's more of an even playing field and such. This is why Vanderbilt can beat Tennessee now, etc., on the gridiron. Similarly, at one point, Tennessee was probably one of the biggest spenders in women's college basketball. They made it their sport back in the 80s. And Summitt was able to benefit from that. But now, Mississippi State, South Carolina, there are more suitors. There are more players in the game. And to try to hold Warlick up to the level of, like I said, 1987 Tennessee Lady Vols, I think is absurd. But yet we get that when we hear, well, this was the first time that Tennessee ever lost a home NCAA tournament game. They're playing the number 12 team in the country. They're not playing Tennessee Tech. What's your thoughts?
Okay, well, there's truth to that. There is more parity. I don't think people were judging Warlick by the 1980 standards, because if you remember, people weren't judging Pat Summitt by the 90 standards either towards the end. I mean, she had before those last two national titles in 2007 and 2008, Tennessee had a drought.
Yeah.
I think it was 98 to 2006 or 2007. But they still remained in the mix. They still got players. They were finally able to break through in 07. I agree with you about, Pat Summitt's last 4 years were definitely underachieving, but that last year she was really not even coaching. That was Holly's team. That was Holly that was coaching. And I think that Pat Summitt, again, it's hard to talk about and it's hard to say, but I think many of us agree that she was probably coaching with her illness longer than even she knew she was coaching with it.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I mean, there's no first round exit from the NCAA tournament, and you can't say that about, I think it was 2010. That happened to Tennessee. 2009. Forgive me, I got the years mixed up. But yeah, there's no first round exit there. I mean, if we're going to play that game, and I know that Tennessee standards are big, but she's not the one, Warlick, that quit playing Connecticut. And I think that had a lot to do with the quote-unquote demise of the Lady Vols and such. I guess my thing is that this is a woman who has been really, I think, with the program now longer than Summitt was, and yet she is not as revered. I know she wasn't the boss during those national championships. She was the assistant, but I think she does deserve reverence, and I do think that number 12 in the country, all this loyalty to the program, yeah, if she wants to continue to coach, I definitely give her 3 years and all that. And if I got to eat it up, then it's a healthy severance package to somebody whose career deserves it. She's the first player to ever have her number retired while she was still playing, for crying out loud. I mean, think about that.
I know about that. I know that she was the first to have her number retired. But, sometimes you got to set fate with legends. I mean, Phil Fulmer had given how many years of his life to the university before Tennessee let him go? Now, to be fair, again, I think any fan that has seen the last 10 years would call that a mistake. But that's more about how Tennessee handled things after firing Fulmer, not because they fired Fulmer.
Well, I mean, I could point out that the recruiting was down in 5 and 7 and all that in Fulmer's last year, but just pointing that out, I guess, we saw Earl Bruce passed away. And I think, Earl Bruce was 81, 26, and 1 as Ohio State's coach. And the only reason people didn't like him, he was as loyal to Ohio State as anybody you'll ever find, was he wasn't Woody Hayes. And you know what? When they got rid of him and they brought in John Cooper, Buckeye fans didn't like him anymore, and he couldn't beat Michigan. I think you mentioned the Fulmer dismissal. I think that, if I can use the college football analogies, Earl Bruce, beware of what you wish for. I really believe that. And if you're trying to play that Tennessee is still this elite women's college basketball program, it's tough for me to say that they will continue to be so if they fire the person who has been there every step of the way. That's the way I see it. Now, do you have a rebuttal?
Well, to be fair, I mean, remember John Cooper, he did struggle a lot, but he came close to a couple of national titles in the 90s.
Close, but I mean, they're talking, he went to the Elite Eight. That's close to a national championship too. I mean, I know, I remember Cooper being he was looked at as an outsider in Ohio, I'll tell you that. And I wonder if you bring in, an assistant from Connecticut or something. I mean, just, ABC coach, that's going to be looked upon as an outsider at Tennessee as well, will it not?
Yes, it will. I think Tennessee would have to make the right hire. I think there's other hires they could make. I think that the reason I judge with Holly is, you're right, there's more parity with the women's game, but Holly has had periods where, at least if you went with recruiting classes, and I know I know how you personally feel about recruiting rankings.
Yeah.
But they were significantly better than many, at least of the other SEC teams. And it's one thing if she's not going. It's one thing to not. I don't think she's being held to a standard of not winning national titles, or maybe not even going to Final Fours. But going on, for the last 3 years being 7 to 9 in the SEC, which is where she's stood, and whereas Tennessee, if we want to say Tennessee shouldn't be elite of the elite overall,
number 12, 13 in the country?
Yes, but average in the SEC standings, they were a 7 seed in the SEC tournament this year, and the 2 years before that, they were never even a top 25 team. And so I think that the SEC now the SEC gets much better. I mean, you have what Vic Schaefer's doing at Mississippi State's remarkable.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, he's doing it without getting top 10 recruiting classes.
Yeah, Mississippi State's good at that. Yeah.
Yeah, and but I would say that Holly has gotten enough talent to at least. I think it's reasonable to say that Tennessee, even if they're going to have struggling years and fall out and have droughts and not making the Final Four, it's reasonable to expect them to be in the running with the elite of the elite in the SEC in down years. Let's not forget their only quality win this year. If people follow their schedule, the only decent win they had was Texas. I'm not giving them credit for either South Carolina win when South Carolina didn't have Asia Wilson either time.
Interesting. Okay. Interesting.
I think that's just.
No, I would just point out that, like I said, I think that you'd be doing, right now, all the glory has come with Holly Warlick, and I do think that she deserves more loyalty. And if you give her the extension, like I'm talking about, and even if you feel you have to eat it, if they lose every game next year, well, you know what? She's deserved a nice severance package. That's all that's my point on that. And at least should be, if it's up to me, my vote would be for loyalty. There you go. That's my point right there. I'm up against it, man. I got commercials to play. I got praise for Caleb Calhoun, even if we disagree about this. Tri-City Sports Now. We're coming back after this. And I will